get started. So, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on rethinking the higher education system. We'll talk about trends, demands, social issues, and the works. We're thrilled to have amazing industry professionals with us here today, all of whom share a passion for exploring the latest trends and innovations in this industry. My name is Adriano Caruso. I'm extremely delighted to be kicking off the Advent Group webinar series. This is the first of many. I'm actually calling you from Latin America, where we're running our Access MBA and Access Masters recruitment events. At Advent Group, we are dedicated to helping higher education institutions connect with students and achieve their enrollment goals. As a leader in the education industry, Advent Group has supported hundreds of institutions in their student recruitment efforts through international student recruitment events, digital marketing, and data analysis. We're proud to have established a reputation for excellence and expertise in our field. This is one of the reasons that we've actually planned this webinar series. Our goal is really to create a platform where we can share our knowledge and insights with you, and where you can connect with like-minded professionals and explore new ideas and strategies for success. So without further delay, I'll give a quick introduction to all of our amazing panelists today. So we have Dr. Olivier Guillet, who was the Dean of International Affairs at EM Lyon Business School and is now operating as a senior consultant at his own firm, Olivier Guillet Consulting. We have Ms. Deidre Dignon, who is the head of admissions and advising at Webster Vienna Private University. She has been in the admissions field for quite a few years, so we're very delighted to have both of you here. And we have Dr. Jan Hover, who is Associate Dean of the ESADE MBA at ESADE Business School. So thank you all so much for being here. We're going to jump right into it with the questions and really get this webinar started. For all of those who are attending, and I'll repeat this midway through for those who join late, we are going to be having about a 10-minute Q&A session at the end of today's webinar. So throughout the answers, if anything piques your interest, really keep it in mind, and you can ask our panelists. So I'm actually going to start with Jan. I'll come to you with the first question, and for the other two panelists, if you want to add on, feel free. So how has the higher education system changed over the past 2 to 3 years? It's a crazy time to be in the industry. And are there any significant trends that you've observed that are really impacting the development of the industry?
Yeah, thank you very much. We started this panel, and you start directly with a very, very important and relevant question for all of us in the higher education industry. I mean, I think there are many trends. I think most institutions around the world went through a little shock, which was the COVID pandemic. We all tried to adjust as quickly as possible. And now we're entering the post-COVID period, and we all have to find now what is the new normal? What are the learnings we can take away from that? Because all schools had to go on hyperdrive, I think, do an immense learning effort to adjust to the challenge we had in the COVID pandemic. This talks about digitalizing content and thinking about hybrid models. Now, some of them will remain for sure. And I think talking about the content perspective, this is one of the interesting aspects of what is now the right balance, mixing maybe the classical models some schools have with the new possibilities which we have discovered. We maybe in like 5 years ago, we didn't perceive as feasible. That doesn't mean that all schools will just become only online schools and hybrid schools. It's really finding the mix, and then for each school trying to find its specific niche. And now then we can talk about what it means for the technical capabilities schools need. We also can talk about geographic differences between schools. But for me, I think this is the big challenge, finding this real balance and equilibrium specific to the niche of each player or school in the industry.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be coming back to that technology point that you made because it's something that we're seeing so much in the industry. And Deidre, I'll come to you for the next one here. Just building on those challenges and keeping those developments in mind, what do you think are the biggest challenges that we're facing in the industry? And Olivier, I could come to you after her response as well.
I think the biggest challenge is a lot of universities and higher education institutions are finding it hard to adapt. And the problem with having technology become an integral part of education is that you have to embrace it first, and you have to accept it's part of the deal. And you can't just get away and say, oh no, I'm pretty safe where I am, I'm okay. I just want to do things the way I've done them for the last 20 years. It's just not going to work. And we all have targets, obviously, in universities. I'm a big chunk of the operations targets here at Webster. And part of the deal is a lot of our students are just not able to come here immediately or be present all the time. And I think that the biggest challenge is, how universities deal with that and make sure that these students stay with the university, and not just say, oh, okay, you're fine, we'll just let you go and allow the students who can do it to come. And that's not very inclusive, I think. And inclusivity is also a big challenge in universities, whether it's because of your ability to learn in a hybrid format or an on-campus format, or because of your socioeconomic status, which also affects how accessible the opportunity is for you. So these are challenges that we, if we want to really be relevant in the next decades and obviously the next century, then we have to adapt, or else we will become irrelevant and will fail in the higher education, the business of higher education.
Right. And Olivier, you could build on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are many challenges, I guess, for us to take at the moment and in the coming years. I would add a cognitive challenge from the student's point of view, which is, up until before the pandemic, they could, even though of course, they had wide access to social media and YouTube and videos and very much used to short content, entertaining content, easily accessible content, made sometimes by independent people, sometimes by people with huge resources to actually put these videos together. They were, before the pandemic, I think they could totally dissociate the time spent in front of the screens, and they would come to school because that's what you do, and they expect a completely different format. But now that we've been constrained by the pandemic to digitalize a lot of our content, the comparison is easier for our students, because we've become competitors on that huge market, which is the market of cognitive availability. And it's difficult for them not to do the comparison, and we don't necessarily have the resources nor the know-how and expertise that some of the great YouTubers have, or sometimes some of the big networks have, when it comes to making content extremely entertaining. And I think it's an interesting challenge for us, and for our professors as well, for us as program designers, but also for our professors as the ones who deliver this content.
Yeah, and I really want to build on that point in terms of, student perspective, because the experience has changed. Like you said, it's a different world out there, and the content is different. So Jan, I'll come back to you with this one. How do you think the institutions can better meet the needs of today's students, whether we talk in terms of teaching in the classroom or their needs in general by coming to the university and whatnot?
I mean, I think for schools, it's very important, be very close to the trends, whether it's related to the students themselves, but also to companies or other stakeholders. So for us, means this we have to be much more out of the classroom. I mean, we always strive to do that, but I think it's become extremely, that becomes a necessity. So the classroom is not the only end of teaching. And when we speak with stakeholders, we not only engage externally, we bring them to class, we do projects there where we stay relevant, we know what's up to date. It helps us to find the gaps in capabilities we have. It helps us to find the gaps in the curriculum we have, and then we can fill this. But we have to be very, very close to the students as much as to the companies, and only so we can actually see what we need and where the trends are really going.
Yeah, and I'll stick with you for this next one here, because I want to take that idea and those challenges, keeping them in mind and translating them to preparing students for the workforce. So what changes would you say are needed in terms of curriculum and teaching methods to better prepare students in terms of transitioning in today's workforce, which has also been affected? And Deidre, will come to you afterwards as well with this one.
So sorry, I couldn't hear that was still for me. Is correct?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
For us, means this that the content delivery, the classes we do, and we all call it lectures, but none of our lectures are a classic lecture in itself. It is always active, engaged with speakers, with company projects, with simulations. This has to be the new normal. I think it is fundamental when we're talking about the way how we teach. Okay, and then the next question is which methodologies we can use to support this from a technological side. I think this is what Olivier mentioned, and there are a lot of schools. We have new competitors, and we need new skill sets. I mean, as you said, we are not all YouTubers. We all don't have TV networks helping us setting us up. Good thing is all of us have the looks as TV moderators, all four of us. But we just this is a coincidence. So that's the thing, and then the content itself. So what subjects have to be changed? Which digitalization is important? We talk about diversity, inclusion. How will this shape the content itself? I think these are the three pillars we have to work at the same time.
Amazing, thank you. And Nidra, we'll move on to you.
I think there are three aspects that I would talk about. First of all, what type of learning takes place in the classroom. And in this respect, I think that professors, instructors, don't play the role of a teacher anymore, but more of a facilitator of learning. And so, for example, in our graduate programs, we talk about how it's not actually the student, either the teacher or the professor doing most of the talking, but you learn faster. You actually learn and master a subject matter better if you're the one explaining it to others, because it reinforces what you already know, and then it challenges you to actually explain it in a way that is very clear and understandable to other people who may have a different background and perception and level of intelligence, which we all need in the workforce. You're not going to deal with everyone who has the same intellectual level as you have, right? So you have to consider that everyone you're going to deal with will have maybe a different perception or a different meaning that they'll attach to what they learn. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, of course, yes, you really have to incorporate in not the interactive lectures and seminars and whatever you do, type of format that you use in your instruction, what companies expect from employees. And so you really have to make sure that there's a lot of exposure to what or companies and organizations, especially the ones that are considered reputable, are doing the right thing in terms of corporate social responsibility. What do they expect from their future employees and managers, for example? So that's something so contact and exposure to these types of expectations and real life, real world situations will be very important. And of course, there is always, for example, for graduate programs, you always have this thesis component, right? So I think, and I know that maybe some of my colleagues will not agree, but when it comes to research and doing the thesis, maybe there has to be a different focus on actually going out there and meeting with people. And that's the thing. It's not just about going online completely, but also we learned during the pandemic that a lot of people were affected by not having human contact. That's why we find that a lot of students are no longer as engaged when they come back. They no longer want to participate in events. They don't show up when there's a career day and there are actually good companies that are here. And I think that it's because we haven't learned to optimize human contact. And so that's one of the things that we need to do. If we're going to be meeting with people, we better make sure that it's really going to be beneficial to the students. And as you said earlier, it has to also have an entertainment component. I don't like it, but it's true. You have to make them interested. And a part of it is also making it look more attractive, entertaining, and fascinating so that, after 10 minutes, they're not bored and want to leave. I can find this on YouTube. You can't do that because then they can easily say, I don't want to come here. I'll just find the same content on YouTube or on TikTok. For goodness sake, it's like we're 3 minutes maximum. So that's where we are right now. And it's a challenge also, but we have to do it, like I said, otherwise we're gonna fall behind.
Right. And do you think that technology still plays a role in that challenge in terms of, using it alongside of building that human interaction, making and building value there?
I mean, in terms of the richness of communication, tools, I think that obviously, video chats like this, video meetings like this are still richer than just email. And a posted lecture, a posted video on your learning management system, that's certainly far richer. But there are certain things that you don't catch. So It doesn't have to be completely online. It can be that, okay, for example, for the thesis, you don't have to always see or be in a meeting room with your supervisor or with your professors, right? You can schedule that so that, you know, you can check on the progress of a student with their subject or with their thesis or whatever they're doing with their project. But a big chunk of it is also figuring out, okay, where are you in terms of, you know, are you lost? Where do you need my help? So it's more about just asking questions and encouraging the students to voice out whatever concerns they have, whatever they feel insecure about. And then they'll feel that, okay, I'm a little bit more confident. I know what to do. I'm not lost. I'm not going to make big mistakes. And I think when you're with the person physically, there are certain things that you can see that you can't see in a video call. So it's still important, but it can be minimized. So you don't have to spend too much time also, you know, commuting or living in a different city, which also means more expenses for a student. And again, that's something that universities should explore, I think, and Bright are only starting really to do that.
Right. And whenever it comes to this, I really want to build on this point because I think it's extremely important, kind of creating that differentiation there. Ivy, I'll come to you with this one, and Jan, you could add on afterwards as well if you'd like. How would you say that we can kind of better assess and measure the quality of higher education and also these kind of human interactions and ensuring that environment is there? How would you say we can assess and measure that?
Well, but before, if you allow me, before going to this question of measurement, it's linked to what Jan and Deirdre have mentioned before regarding the needs of the students, and in the needs, I think the needs of the students, as far as I understand it, is both about what they require and what they desire, right? And what they require is at a first level, professionalization and socialization, and same for what they desire. They desire professionalization, they desire a job, and they desire some kind of a student life. But at a deeper strata, there are other things that also we know are very important, like internationalization and cultural literacy, but also self-knowledge and mastery. This is the kind of things that they definitely require. Preparation to uncertainty, this is certainly something that they require. But in what they desire, I think I wouldn't really be as far as going to say that they require it, even though I tend to believe it myself, but it's an opinion. I've come to realize that a lot of what they desire, surprisingly, or to their surprise, is also intellectual challenge. They desire intellectual development. And even if this was not their intention in the first place, very often, especially when they come to rather technical fields, it's like, okay, I want to do this technical field for whatever reason, and then I want to specialize in it. But for a certain category of students, and I wouldn't, maybe a fair representation of students, after a while, they seem to be yearning for meaning, for depth, for inspiration, because they need it, but also from a more utilitarian point of view, because they know that it'll contribute to their capacity to influence and to have an impact on the things that matter to them. And I think this is, of course, and this is paradoxical with their sometimes limited capacity to focus due to the new habits. But I think this is the difference between higher education and professional training. In my conception, higher education is somehow about developing students as individuals to contribute to growing their intelligence, and in a way and in a mindset that is oriented towards progress and justice for society. And now to go to your first question, say how we do to first develop that, to change the system so that it maybe goes more towards that line, and how do we measure it? I think student experience and student feedback is a good one, but it would have to be qualitative evaluation. I'm not sure that quantitative evaluation will be as far as that, or unless you would develop something very, very efficient. I think we have to have it ourselves as a mindset to say, okay, because we understand that this is something that our students need, we're going to to deliver, and then to ask questions that are related to this capacity that we might have had to help them grow intellectually, and to nourish their souls in a way. If I don't want to sound too dramatic, a lot of us would agree to say that the world needs re-enchanting, but us as educators, we bear a very heavy weight on this re-enchantment, and I tend to believe that it can only come by introducing more depth and more meaning in the content we provide to students, and not just technical professional tools, even if they are absolutely necessary, and they'll be their first intentions coming to us. But I think very quickly they seem to be requiring more.
I think maybe, Olivier, to address your point, and because I think it's very important before we go to measurement to make this very, very clear. Companies still need certain business knowledge, and that has to be transmitted on a certain level. It's a hygiene factor, but this is not what sets us apart. I mean, the basic business knowledge, even 40 years ago, you got it probably cheaper with a library card. Now you have YouTube. It's a bit more convenient, but this is not what our added value really is. And at least for SADA, I think this is also very clear how we position ourselves. It is about the educational experience, which leads to new opportunities, which maybe before not were visible. As a statistic, in the MBA program in the SADE, more than 30% are triple jumpers. These are people who change function, location, and industry. Okay, so this is quite substantially over 70% do 2 of these. That means it's a fundamental life change for these participants. And quite often what we see that students come to us with a certain set focus, but based on the knowledge, but also the environment, the impulses we can give, some which are unexpected, they change. A lot of us come there, oh yes, I want to become a consultant. I want to work for one of the top 3 consulting firms, and that is my career path, very streamlined. But in our, like Asad is very entrepreneurial oriented. We do have a lot of entrepreneurs. We are very much embedded in the entrepreneurship system. So suddenly they come to us and say, I don't know, I think I have to rethink, challenge my life plan, and now become an entrepreneur, or vice versa. We have entrepreneurs who become consultants. This is all possible. But creating this stimulus, sometimes it also means a stretch to the student, because we open up new possibilities. I think this is what a YouTube video clip cannot do, for sure not. But we, through course design, through which programs we have, which students we have, which inputs I think we can do that. And then coming back to the question about measurement, this is of course much harder to measure and to assess than if somebody understands a certain accounting principle or Porter's 5 forces. That is easy to measure. But measuring the impact in people's life, the opportunities that they see, it's very, very different. And then even further, which impact this has, not only on the students, but I think we also have a responsibility to society. Okay, doing better on the ecosystem, whether it's entrepreneurship, position, and then how our students behave in this institution. Do they behave ethical, which along with our values? I think that's even another question. Makes it very, very hard. I don't know the answers there yet. I think there are a lot of things we'll be exploring, but it has to be qualitatively, it has to be much wider set of indicators, has include all the different stakeholders, and it's definitely not only content knowledge from a book, and definitely not multiple choice.
Right, it is a challenge to accurately measure and assess that. And I do want to take a little bit of a pivot and look at it still from the technology point of view as well. And Olivier, I'll come back to you, and Deidre, I'll come to you afterwards with this one. But in terms of, building those students up, building that confidence and that connection, how would you say that the schools could ensure that technology is used in a way that more so enhances the student learning experience and engagement rather than detracts from it?
That's a very good question.
I can start with you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think we've all experienced when we got hit by the pandemic. At least I experienced that myself. I was working at Sciences Po in France back then, and I had a class going on. And from one day I was teaching the students in class, and then the next day, literally, I was teaching the students on Zoom, which I didn't even know existed. But the first thing that I experienced was the disappearance of my body. We said, that's interesting. So somehow it made me realize that it totally changed my the representation I had of my mission and said, okay, now my budget's disappeared, but as soon as I kind of share my PowerPoint presentation, and you see me in the little window in the bottom right-hand corner, and said, okay, what is it for me to do? You know, I could be anybody. It could be an actor. It could be my second cousin reading my class, you know, instead of me because I want to play tennis or something. And it totally changed my mindset regarding teaching. But then I tried to say, okay, how can I use it for what it is and in the best of its abilities? So I kind of, I'm sorry, I'm sharing my personal experience, but I kind of traded part of what we would call the silent syllabus that we all get from profs, and which is precious in a way. You know, we want to be honest, what we remember from our best professors is not necessarily the content, also because content is very likely to change. I mean, if we all look back to our doctoral thesis, most of them would be totally irrelevant for a wide range of reasons and totally useless today. But it's about a way of thinking about things. It's about how they approach things. It's about how they think and how they deliver their message. And that is difficult to deliver, to convey in digital, through digital tools. And so I try to focus more on visuals and to improve the sound quality of my presentations and all that. But I'm not sure that made it up to what they possibly missed related to that silent syllabus, because we're mimetic creatures also. So I think that digitalization can achieve and will achieve greater things. I'm not at all technophobic, and I wouldn't be surprised if in a few years we'll be totally amazed, you know, with what we can do in holograms or whatever, okay, in science fiction scenarios. But for now, I think they should really be useful what they can actually do, which is to have interaction, basically, because otherwise there's no point. And if you look at the quality of some of the MOOCs, which are free, available to everyone, it's amazing. It's better than a documentary. They're actually made by the same people who do documentaries with top university professors. So if you provide Zoom sessions where really you don't give this opportunity for interaction and try to achieve the same thing that a recorded content would do, then I think you're missing the point. So always try to put things in context to say, okay, what is it that we want to achieve in this particular instance? And don't necessarily believe that a technology will be able to take over and everything and solve all problems.
And Deidre, will come to you to wrap up on that point.
I think there are two ways that you can leverage technology to ensure that it actually adds to learning instead of detracting from it. It's to use it for developing creativity and collaboration. So there are ways that instead of feeding content to students and just giving them things that are already done, I think you can use, and I'm not also an expert on all the technological platforms that are out there, but there are tools that you can use that allow students to think of how they can do something differently. And I think that that's something that they need to do anyway, because we don't know what jobs will be available in the future. So they need to be able to think outside of what's standard, right? So you can use tools where they're forced to think and also challenged, right? To actually do something that's original, that may be a combination of everything that they've learned from the internet, from media, right? And then see what they can come up with. That's one way that you can use technology and leverage it to accelerate or contribute to learning. The other thing is collaboration. So teamwork is always, a buzzword for us in admissions, and advising. You need to learn to work with other people, not just with yourself and by yourself. So you could use tools and make sure that this is in different projects, group projects or pair projects, where two people will actually develop something out of a technological tool. I'm not being very specific here because, of course, there are so many tools out there that I haven't even used myself. So it could be that it's a more difficult thing to acquire that tool. But there are tools out there that allow students to work together in a collaborative fashion. And it allows both of them to actually start asking questions of each other and use the strengths that each person has in that group. because we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And the thing that for example, I have a team of 5 people, right? They're all very different in their strengths and weaknesses. They all have very different personalities, but it works well because they complement one another. And I think that that's a skill that can be learned, that can be developed by using tools that not necessarily force students to, to learn to work with other people with a different set of strengths, but also to just really find out, okay, and discover and figure out, okay, how do I actually take advantage of my partner or my team member's skills, and how does my team member or my colleague or my teammate take advantage of my strengths? So how can we help each other? And I think that's one way that, on a practical standpoint, that students can actually benefit from using technology, because you need to learn to work together.
Yeah, and building on what these types of tools may be in the years to come, I know the environment is very unpredictable and whatnot, but Jan, I'll ask you if you have any insight into this in terms of what innovations and what types of technologies do you think have the greatest potential of impacting this industry of higher education?
I mean, right now we all talk about ChatGPT. That is obvious one. I think virtual classrooms is obviously another one. So I think I think probably the two big trends. And from the technological side, I would argue now, to which extent they are both a reality right now. That's maybe. I mean, ChatGPT is a reality. Students use it. The faculty uses it. There's reality. The virtual classrooms. We're using them for specific cases, but at the moment they're still very different to a real human experience. And this is what Olivier said when he talked about technology. And I think it's very, very important that these tools right now cannot substitute, I think, a normal human learning experience. And that's very, very clear. They can complement, they can add, but at the moment I don't think they are substitutes yet. And sometimes we see, and also from students, a certain expectation. So are you using these tools? There's a certain pressure to use these tools from investors, from funding bodies, from governments. And sometimes I think we actually have to say, no, we don't, because they're not beneficial to the students. I think we have to be very good. Which tool is yet already ready to be implemented successfully? And then to others, we maybe have to say, hold. But I think like always when an adaptation and when we have disruptive technologies, I think the schools have to be able still observe this and play around with it, the experimentation, because if they ignore it right now completely and then they want to adopt it, maybe then it's too late.
Right. And aside from being selective of what technologies to incorporate and still staying open, I'll stay with you for this one here. And Olivier, you can add on afterwards. How would you say that institutions can really further foster the innovation and entrepreneurship among students? Because like you said, it kind of builds and it's an add-on, but it's not so much the foundation.
I mean, for us it's central, because I have to say the MBA or SADIS, the entrepreneurship is probably our strongest positioning area. So it's like we really position us as an entrepreneurship school. And there we have, we attack this from multiple angles. Of course, we have entrepreneurship classes in the core, for example, in the MBA, but also in other programs. But then particularly in the entrepreneurship space, I think two things are very important. Embed students in a wider ecosystem. It is not only the program, this is real entrepreneurs, this is funders, this is angel investors, this is VC, this goes beyond the school, this is Barcelona's entrepreneurship hub. And of course, we want to take advantage of this whole ecosystem. Then we go to Silicon Valley, we go to Berlin to experience these ecosystems as well. We talk to the alumni. It is really like entrepreneurship, particularly innovation, is an ecosystem activity. Okay, and the other point is that it's hands-on. So that means classes have to be hands-on. You have to go out, you have to experiment, you have to hit markets, you have to do real projects, you have to do real customers, you have to fail. You fail fast, limited, but get feedback. So I think that is very, very important. So I think we before talked about the thesis. For example, for this reason, we don't have a thesis anymore. Our students basically have to do real consulting projects with a consulting firm for real companies, or work for a startup. These are the two options to think about. Okay, yes, you have to engage, get your hands dirty in the system. And there's also where the stimulus come, the examples before, then people see, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur, or not.
And Olivier, building on that.
Yeah, well, everything Jan has just said makes absolute sense. I would just add that maybe if your question is how can we foster an entrepreneurial mindset, let's talk about undergraduate, because it's something that we could probably favorize a little bit earlier as well. And of course, we know that at undergraduate level, we will have people that will naturally be, for a wide range of reasons, oriented towards entrepreneurship, and others that don't necessarily consider it. One way that is more academic, because I'm not going to say again what Jan said, which was absolutely true, but to do it is to foster transdisciplinarity, but not only transdisciplinarity, also multidisciplinarity, which is not quite the same thing. Because the times that we're going through, for various reasons, resemble a little bit the Renaissance. We can look at it this way if we want to. We tend to look at it in a probably darker way and look at it like the Middle Ages or something. But if we want to be a little bit more optimistic, it's a little bit like the Renaissance. And what I like about the Renaissance is the Renaissance man or woman, obviously, which is the spirit of the polymath. People were actually able to tackle wide range of issues and become geniuses in wide range of issues. And the easy answer to that is said, yeah, but come on. Things were not as complicated back then. Mathematics were not as complicated, and astronomy was not as complicated, and same for. Seriously, I don't believe that a second. Trying to read the correspondence of Spinoza and who was not a mathematician, and try to do some of the math that we're discussing with average people selling silk or whatever. So it was a mindset. It's not because it was less complicated. And I think favoring this mindset is okay. I come from a country, for example, where we tend to tag people a lot at a very early age and say, okay, you're a scientist or you're a literary person, or whatever else. I think it's a disaster because, well, the kids tend to believe it because we all yearn for identity for a start, but also because it's proven by results and then by orientation, and then it becomes factual. And said, yeah, you're okay, at 18 or 19 years old, you're a scientist. It's a shame because I believe there's a lot in common between the entrepreneurial spirit and this spirit of the man of the Renaissance in its capacity to look at the world in a very holistic and multi-discipline type of experience.
Olivier, if you let me maybe quickly respond to it, because I love your point so much, and it reminds me we had the Minister of Innovation and Economy from Israel, Nir Barkat, on campus last week, and he spoke to the MBA, and one of our MBA students asked, and he was talking about startup nation, Israel as a country, which is one of the most successful countries fostering innovation and entrepreneurship. But he would like to add and contribute. And this was MBA students, and MBA students asked, and he said, the most important thing is not the MBA students. And they were like, oh, really? No, he said, no, I have to go to the high school teachers. Because as you said, going to the undergraduates, he said, no, I want to go to high school students.
Exactly.
And that's the point I want to attack. If late on is too late. So he was even going, and I was very eye-opening. It's not my focus, but I thought, and then also the approach, what he said is really important, the principles, how they can foster that. But again, early on, interdisciplinary. So very much I like your point.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Yeah.
It's a great comparison, and it's definitely a valuable point to have been made. And thank you, Olivier and Jan, for adding on as well. Deidre, I'll come to you for our next topic. We'll shift a little bit here, stepping outside of the classroom. I wanted to discuss what was the role of more so the other services that these institutions offer. So, we can talk about career counseling, other career development services, and what part do they play in the preparing postgraduate students for the job market, or preparing them in general as well. And Olivier, you can add on as well if you want to kind of connect your last point as well to this.
A big chunk of what we find students really need help in is really navigating in the real world and figuring out, okay, is it enough that I know this stuff and know the material and know the content? And a lot of what we find, the questions I get, for example, regardless, which, if it's a bachelor's or a master's level fair, for example, or a recruitment event, is like, are you going to help us find our footing in the career world, right? And establish our careers. And that's something that we find is extremely, because you're investing in education. It's not necessarily, for free. And for us, for example, in the private university industry, you have to have a return on investment, right? When it comes to investing money in education, you need to have results. Otherwise, they'll figure it out and they're going to spread the word about you. And then you won't find students anymore interested to attend your program. So from a business perspective, obviously it's a unique value proposition that you need to maintain and maybe strengthen and improve and try to be better at, especially when you compare yourself to competitors, for example. It's also, I think, but for majority of our students, in the past, many people thought, oh, here, you're going to university, you're very academic, you want to pursue an academic career, but that's not really the case anymore. University is also for making sure that you have the ability to change careers, for example, especially at the master's level, that you're not stuck in one particular field. And that was actually the reason why I took a master's degree too. It was, for me, I didn't want to be stuck somewhere. I wanted to have the ability to shift and change into a different industry. And, knowing more about what other settings or and organizational expectations would be, helped me understand, okay, what do I need to do to be able to be an attractive candidate, right, for future employers? And that's something that they will never cease to prioritize. And so it's important that we find people who are experienced, who are knowledgeable, who understand the different needs of people from different backgrounds as well, because we're not just dealing with one type of student. We're trying, all universities, all higher education institutions want to be more diverse, more inclusive, but that means we also have to understand their needs and their expectations and really their limitations as well. So trying to meet and make sure that we tailor our approach in assisting students, whether it's career services, student counseling, student resource centers, student services, right? That we understand, we are able to communicate with them in a more effective way that's based on how they would easily understand the information, and also really help them with practicing how to, we all do mock interviews, we all review CVs, we all review cover letters, right? But it's important to also explain to them why it's essential and why, you can't just, you can't have one standard format, and adaptability is an important skill to have. And so by exemplifying that, you're actually preparing them for jobs that we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, most definitely. And Olivier, if you want to add on as well,
yeah,
or build on the last point.
I think it's totally complementary to what Deirdre just said, is that I think the role of career advisors before the students graduate is also to challenge their project and to provide them insight as to themselves, really, self-knowledge, because I think, and to really make them understand that professional orientation, if not professional success, is the art of aligning a wide range of concepts that on paper can make sense, but don't necessarily make sense in reality. Concepts such as, a job description, a brand, a sector of industry, plus my personality, what I see as my desires. And what I mean by challenge their project, say, okay, you said you would like to work for such company. Why is that? What is at the heart of your motivation to do that? Okay, maybe you realize that that makes absolute sense, but maybe you realize that what they really want to do can be better achieved doing something slightly different, if not completely different. And a lot of students, even though a lot of them have had experience while doing their studies and did internship and all that, don't necessarily understand that it's actually very difficult to change who you are as a person. And I'm not saying it's impossible, we all do our best, but the earlier you start to to worry less about your weaknesses and focus on your strength, then the sooner you'll thrive. And to do that, you have to be lucid about yourself and lucid about the company you're applying to, and lucid about the job description. You know, human resources, for example. Okay, human resources. So there's human in it, so that must be very nice and appealing to people who are human oriented. Yeah, that's part of it. But another part of it is pretty harsh, sometimes very technical. And from a human point of view, it's not for everyone. And students are not necessarily aware of these things, and probably need a little bit of support into bringing lucidity to their endeavors.
Very well said, and I like how you made the parallel with Deidre's point as well. And Jan, I'm going to come to you with, I believe, our final question here. Before I do, I wanted to remind the audience that we do have the Q&A afterwards. So if you want to start typing your questions into the Q&A section, feel free to do so, and we'll tackle them afterwards. So Jan, for yourself, I wanted to wrap it up in terms of looking forward and looking at the industry as a whole. What would you say we can do as institutions to ensure that higher education remains relevant, remains effective at both preparing students for the job market, but also remains relevant in the industry as a whole? Because we mentioned earlier, it's a more competitive market. There's new players, new technologies. So can you tell us a little bit there?
I think it's similar what I actually mentioned before. I think we have to be very close to our stakeholders and really understand which value proposition we have to the different stakeholders. So I think that's one thing very, very clearly. And we cannot just say we are universities, we are 100 years old institutions, or this is a concept, and therefore we don't change. So I think we have to be ready, embrace change based on the needs of the different stakeholders we have. What is then ever important, saying that we also cannot jump on each trend and fad, and we have to have something different. We are not consultants, I often say. We have to have also different value proposition than consultants or Google. So we have to be very, very clear about what they can offer, what we can offer, and where we positioning, how we positioning ourselves long term, not just for the next year or two. And it also comes back to content. Yes, we have to be updating content, but if we're chasing just every a new trend every 12 months, doesn't give us a right to color those at university. Finding the balance, I think, is important. But if it's schools, and I think that's important, talking about the whole value chain or the different types of schools also here represented, is we have to be very sure what is our niche, what is our stakeholders, how we position ourselves. And I'm a strategy professor. So it's strategy 101. We have to understand the market, and we have to have a clear long-term positioning. And so preach what we actually teach in a certain way.
Most definitely, yes. Alrighty. So moving on here, I don't see any questions in the chat. I'm not sure if people are still typing. In the meantime, did either Deidre or Olivier want to build on Jan's point there in terms of, strategizing for the future?
I would like to add, I actually strongly agree with making sure that we sit down and have serious discussions with stakeholders, because in essence, the goal of a university should, prepare students for the real life or workforce, for potential employers, for the companies. But also, I just wanted to mention that it's not just the big reputable companies, but also startups, for example, the little small and medium enterprises. It's not the same for every country, I have to admit. In certain countries, there's more encouragement for small and medium enterprises and startups. But that's an opportunity for students to see what mistakes were made as they were trying to build the businesses. I always get this comment from young people, older people think they're smarter. They're not really smarter because they're older. They're smarter because they made more mistakes. They're wiser because they learned a lot more from the things that didn't go well, right? So failure is a part of the process. And I think as with, focusing on our strengths and not so much our weaknesses, we also have to understand that, failure is a part of success. And so even if you fail the first time around, it doesn't mean you should give up. If you want to pursue something, you're passionate about it. And I think we need to encourage students to be that way. And I think that's the kind of approach that we should have. And accept that some people can change their minds. That's another point that our colleagues here made. sometimes people are just not sure at age 21, 22, 25, 30 what they want to do for the rest of their lives. I mean, people just don't stay in jobs anymore for 10 or 20 years as they used to in the past. So we have to make sure that the students are able to apply different skills. And as you also mentioned previously, that they have knowledge not just in one discipline, but in multiple disciplines, and you really have to push them sometimes before they realize that it was a good thing. Some of the things we had to do as younger people, we were forced to do, but then looking back, we didn't like it at that time, but then we realized, yeah, it actually helped me a lot. It made me realize that wasn't for me. I was supposed to go on another route. So I think that just being very authentic towards students and telling them about also the mistakes that people have made, focusing also on the values of what we should focus on if we want to be contributing members of society. I think there's also the question of ethics, obviously. Are you going to do it for yourself? Are you going to care what happens to other people, right? And this is the type of thing that we should try to influence as well. If we have a chance to encourage students to think more about the society and their contribution and their role in it, I think we're also going to have a better impact, and people will see the need for universities to still continue to exist. So I think it's a combination of also not just being successful monetarily, financially, and also in terms of what you personally consider to be your career goals, but also as a good human being, simply as a good human being who is out there to help other people as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we have some questions rolling in here. I don't see it on my end, but my colleagues feeding the questions to me. So we'll start with a question from Laura. And Ivy, I'll come to you with this one here, just because of the points that you made throughout the webinar. I think it would be perfect. She asked, what do we intend exactly with promoting students' meaning, and how should it be promoted? So I think it's developing more on what that exactly means, the students' meaning. Yeah.
That's a good question. One way to answer this question is to answer it from a neurological point of view. I really recommend to all of you, I think as educators, we should be aware of this kind of research. If you're familiar with the works of Ian McGilchrist, who's a prominent brain expert. And, for many years, the popular psychology was saying that basically we had the left brain, which was very good for reason, or mainly dealing with reason, and the right brain mainly dealing with emotions. And then it was just too much for the experts saying, come on, this is so much BS. Let's say once and for all that both hemispheres do everything. And then Ian McGilchrist said, no, quite not exactly that way. Both hemispheres do a lot of things. But there's a difference in degree and a difference in nature. The difference in degree is that the right hemisphere is much more powerful than the left hemisphere. And the second in nature is that only in the right hemisphere, meaning is processed and context is processed. The left hemisphere is mainly bothered about doing things, about implementation, about operationalizing. And I tend to believe that we need to rebalance higher education towards a right brain approach, which is being able to put things in context, not just learn things to apply them because we've been told that's what we have to do, but also strengthen our students' capacity to question, to search for meaning. I mean, obviously, it's not about equipping them with meaning because we don't even know what this is ourselves, but certainly search for it. And to search for it, we need to train them at a wide range of fields which are not necessarily technical, which might be more humanities oriented, which might be more social sciences oriented, which might be more philosophical or psychological, but which are absolutely necessary, particularly at an age where, when it comes to left brains, the machines are, will be for absolutely sure, if not already, are much better than us when it comes to actually implementing things without necessarily making any sense, So what I mean by meaning is this, is the ability to engage dialectically the world and yourself. And the world as society, the world as the world, the entire ecosystem, and our place in it. And this is not something that we often or always do in our institutions.
Amazing. Thank you. We're we're going to move on because we have some more questions here. Another one is, how can you compare your students' years nowadays in terms of needs of society and community, and how has it changed over the years? So Jan, we'll come to you with this one.
It's an interesting one. I mean, I'm not sure how many years I can go back. So I'm the director of the MBA now for 5 years, but I'm teaching for 10, 15 years. So this is maybe the time frame I can talk about. Now, we definitely see the topics like diversity, inclusion, sustainability are absolutely forefront of all our students, very, very clearly. I think institutional, these topics, maybe under different names, were always important for us as a DESADE, but students ask and request and require this. I think this in a modern program, and in a lot of sense, I think students are already more advanced on these topics, particularly the newer generations, that some of the institution they are facing. So I think these topics are essential. And I hope they will stay central. It's not only a fate which will whether in the next 2 or 3 years. I think it will stay, and it will be an integral part, which has to be part of everything what we do. This has to be a curriculum. This has to be teaching, how we engage with stakeholders, our own conduct, whether in the classroom with external stakeholders. It's fundamental of our business nowadays.
Thank you, Jan. And I'm going to do a quick sound check here because the video is frozen on my end. Are you all able to hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect. Amazing. So I'll just continue on. So the third question we have, and I think we'll stop it after this because we're hitting the time limit. So we have the F2F full-time MBA interest in Europe is decreasing. Do you think there is still a place for this kind of program in the upcoming years, or everyone in higher education should start thinking about a blended offer? Jan, I know you're director of the MBA currently, so I'll come to you with this one. And if the other panelists want to add on afterwards, feel free to just jump in. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, when we talk about trends in applicants, I mean, they're anti-cyclical, but they're always waves. You know, if you go back 2 years ago, the numbers were through the roof, and we didn't have enough space. Now the numbers are overall going down, but we as a school, we still on overcapacity. We have a multiplier of applicants for our program. So that's very important to say. I'm not sure if it's for all the schools like this, but at least for us. Now, what we parallel see is that there's a much wider offering for schools, and this is face-to-face online master programs in the United States. But I think this is good. So students can really choose the program which is the best fit for them. Okay, and their choice is good from a student's perspective. Now, in this range of choice, I think face-to-face programs, particularly regarding to the MBA, still have a space. There will be a need for them because they provide certain experiences and which are very, very difficult to mirror with a hybrid or an online program. For some students, for sure, a hybrid or online program is better, but certain experience, certain intensity cannot be mirrored in these programs. And then for these students who are looking for that, I think the MBA program or full face-to-face MBA program is essential. Now, when I say face-to-face MBA, I think now all face-to-face programs have complements through hybridization, through online classes, increased flexibility. I think that's a given. But when I say this is majority face-to-face delivery formats. So short answer, yes, there's a space, and I think this space remains also in the future.
Thank you, Jan. Do
I wanted to say, yeah,
add on to that point as well?
Yes, no, from the types of increase that I get, for example, on the admission side, there is a need for both, for sure. I can't say that, you know, face-to-face is still the predominantly favored choice, because we also have students, you know, who have families to take care of, for example, and sometimes, you know, can't afford to stay in a country for 4 months straight, for a few months straight. But they still want to study. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, do we really want our programs to be more accessible? And for that to be more accessible, we need to have a level of flexibility so that students who want to be on campus are able to come to campus, and those who want to access their interactive lectures and other educational activities are able to do it online. They're not going to obviously have the same experience, that's for sure. And they need to understand that obviously the richer experience would be face-to-face. But if that's what they're capable of doing and they're motivated, not everyone is also the type who would learn the best way through online classes. Some students I know would never be able to learn that way, whereas others are highly motivated and can easily do it. But if they combine it with a job, with a family, you definitely have to offer that. And then that's what I'm encouraging also our management to do. We have to stop thinking that it's either face-to-face, at least here at Webster, it's either face-to-face or nothing, because it's just, we have people who have different life situations. And so if we're going to be truly inclusive and considerate, then we have to also take these considerations into account.
Thank you, Deidre. And I'll stick with you because we'll answer one last question just because it's a little bit more general. And I think it's going to touch on a lot of the points that we spoke about today. And Jan or Olivier, you can feel free to add on afterwards as well. But how would you say, according to you personally, in your experience, the higher education experience affects society? And you could tell us a little bit more about that. They want to know kind of the general impact and effect it has on society.
There are different types of feedback that I get, not just from prospective students, but also from students who have graduated from the master's degree. And the important thing to tell students, in my opinion, is just that it's not just about what your education is. It's all about you and your ability to apply what you've learned, and also your motivation. So the one thing we can't really influence is the level of motivation and effort that a student, an individual person, is willing to apply and to exert so that they can achieve their goals. And so some people need more help, need more pushing to be motivated, and some people don't. Higher education is still, especially in Austria, for example, it's still considered, of esteem, of importance to society and to, prospective employees, right? We all want someone who has had the education, but at the same time, if you compare someone who's had a master's degree and someone who's just had a bachelor's degree and had a lot more work experience, they're almost at the same level. So that's why universities also have to make sure that what they're doing in the classroom with their students, or outside the classroom, if it's hybrid, or if it's, it's a little bit more practical, and for example, in different companies with company partners, that it really mimics or is as close as possible to what they will do when they work. And it's also the same for bachelor's degree students. I have students who think that this is all not useful, and I think it's our job to convince them that this is something that you will use. You don't think so at the moment, but it's important that you understand this will be very useful to you later in life. So, but in terms of just the image of universities, for example, at least here in Austria, they're still essential. I think the biggest question in terms of competition is, how willing are you to adjust what you do and to be flexible in order to allow more students access and the opportunity to attend a higher education institution and achieve or earn a degree. And that's what we have to keep asking ourselves. So if you have higher tuition fees, then you have to allow for more scholarships, for example. And that's what we keep pushing our management to do, because we just don't want students who can afford it. We want students who will work hard and they're definitely more motivated. I'm for always giving opportunity to students who may not have as much money, obviously. I was the same, I was also a scholar. So of course I would like potential students to come in with scholarships, and they will be so grateful that that they'll actually represent you in the best light and also be successful in their career. So I think that as long as we show our good intentions, then universities will still be considered, bastions of enlightenment, if you would want to call that, or knowledge, and I think that society will still deem us relevant. But yeah, there are some sectors that think that it's just not necessary anymore. But that's why we have to do our work and do our part to make sure that we do what's best for the future of our students, regardless what status they're coming from, what background they're coming from. So it's a little too long.
Thank you so much. No, it was perfect. Do the other panelists want to say something as well before we wrap up? Jan or Olivier? All good? Perfect.
Well, maybe just add that in a world which is, according to experts, and not just to experts, I guess, sometimes polarized in our society. And we sense it very much in the United States, but also in Europe to a certain extent, and probably in a different way. And I guess that in the United States, for a wide range of reasons, there's probably more resentment towards higher education than there would be in Europe. I guess that in Europe, we would, when I say we, well, the populist-oriented politicians probably focus more on the rich or on the immigrants rather than on the academics. Whereas in the United States, probably because it's probably harder for the daughter of a lorry driver in Arkansas to become a university professor than, or at least in the idea that this person has of his daughter's future, than to become someone fairly wealthy economically. But I mean that if higher education wants to continue to have a positive role in society, it has to keep humanistic values. And humanistic values, it's not just about, I do higher education because I can afford it and because it'll get me a better job than you. Because if we go down that road, we will only but strengthen and reinforce these polarities. It has to be about humanistic values, which is also about a search of truth, or at least to try to look for it, and not necessarily be mistaken with morality and good intentions, which sometimes we're tempted to do, even if it's legitimate, obviously. But it's no coincidence that many of our universities have the world truth, like Veritas at Harvard, in our mottos. It's part of our mission, I guess.
Extremely well said. Thank you, Olivier.
Thank you.
And I think there, Jan, if you want to add something, if not, we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, a short comment is maybe yes. I mean, I'm at a university, and I believe they have a positive contribution to society by knowledge generation, looking for tools, or at least giving the space to have discussions still, which may be outside the university becoming much harder. So I think absolutely, of course, maybe thereby the role of the schools are changing, or the universities. But I think it's a very important role universities have. And for certain areas, we wouldn't even question this. If you go to medicine or engineering, we would not consider, everybody can be a brain surgeon. That's based on a YouTube video clip. I don't think that's a realistic statement, or let's build a bridge. It's maybe harder in other knowledge domains, but even there, I think it's good to have universities and foster knowledge exchange and knowledge generation as well, because it's another activity we have to do. I mean, universities not only have the role of teaching, but also knowledge generation.
Very well said. Thank you, Jan. And we're going to end it there. We're going to wrap up. I want to thank all of the panelists. Thank you so much for all your insight, your answers. Everything was absolutely amazing. You gave very, very in-depth responses, which I loved. And to all the people who attended as well, thank you so much for joining, and thank you for the questions as well. And yeah, we'll have a fantastic day. Thank you, everyone, once again.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you very much. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.